morning, good afternoon, good evening. The nation is being bombarded with achievement stories of the opposition. Let's be very clear here. 2023 elections were flawed. ZANU-PF blatantly rigged those elections. And SADC and the AU and all the other observer teams condemned the process as flawed and illegal. We have got to be careful here that we don't fall into the trap of believing that the regime that came out of it is delivering on the people's expectations. Because this is exactly what these stories from the likes of Change Radio are telling the nation. That the opposition is delivering. They're even awarding themselves awards for doing such a wonderful work. We've been bombarded with stories of what the opposition are doing in parliament. The truth of the matter is, the election process of 2023 was so flawed, so illegal, it failed to produce a government of what the people wanted. And one of the consequences of a government that the people did not want is that we are stuck with a failed regime, a corrupt, incompetent, and tyrannical regime that is failing to deliver on the nation's needs and expectations. And yet, these stories are telling us a totally different story. That it doesn't matter. Yes, ZANU-PF rigged the elections. Yes, all that doesn't matter. We still are having an opposition that is delivering. I think that is a lie. All these feel-good stories about the opposition delivering is just a lie. What I would like to say to the opposition, and say it loudly and clearly, is that if ZANU-PF or the results of the elections are not having any ill effect on your performance, then you must accept that the opposition are responsible for all the rot and decay in our towns and cities, because the opposition, the MDC, CCC opposition, have retained control of most of our towns and cities for the last 2 decades or more. You cannot have your cake and eat it too. You cannot complain that ZANU-PF is stopping you to deliver things. And yet when people say, okay, the system is not working, the system has failed, you continue participating in it, and after participating, you come up with stories saying exactly the opposite, that you're able to deliver on your promises to the people. I believe you're lying. The opposition is not delivering anything of value to the people of Zimbabwe. The opposition in parliament is in such disarray that ZANU-PF is able to do whatever it pleases. In local government, ZANU-PF has been able to disrupt the operation of local government to the point where the opposition, they're just there more for decoration. Like I've said before, the opposition have been participating in these flawed elections to give ZANU-PF legitimacy. And for the reward of getting a few great seats, they're not achieving anything of any value at all. That is the reality that the people of Zimbabwe must realize. Those who want to accept the opposition are doing a good job, they've got also to accept that the rotten decay must be blamed on the opposition. We cannot have it both ways. I believe SADC's report was absolutely spot on. The 2023 elections were rigged. They failed to deliver a competent government of the people's choosing. That is the reality we have to deal with.
Well, thank you so much. First of all, let me be clear that the changing of any dynamic or situation in any of our African countries is a preserve of the citizens of that country, in this case, the Zimbabwean people. An election observation team goes there to support the process by observing and being able to release a statement of our observations that, for instance, in Zimbabwe, we raised several issues of transparency and also the independence of the Electoral Commission and things which happen in many other countries, you know. But at the end of the day, once we produce the report and make it available to the Zimbabwean authorities and eventually to the Zimbabwean people, it really remains the preserve of the Zimbabwean people to fight for the freedoms that they need themselves and to correct those issues that have been observed. The reason why we have multiple observation missions is to ensure that, you know, there's a comparison, you know, taking place between the SADC report and the European Union report, the African Union report, and then they can see that those issues that repeat themselves in all these reports, it's up to the Zimbabwean people. And this is where I appeal to all political leaders, not only in Zimbabwe, especially the elections that are coming in Mozambique, that are coming in South Africa, in DRC. We have to make up our minds that, look, at the end of the day, once the people in the country are given an opportunity to monitor the elections, because they also monitor, it starts not during the day of the elections. They must make sure that the constitutional lacunas that can affect a good election are dealt with months before the election, and they must fight to ensure that there's a level playing field. They should never wait for the time when the election is taking place. They must also insist that the electoral commissions and the governments in those countries abide by international norms in holding democratic elections. And this fight must be more vicious before the election comes.
That message must be repeated. 2023 elections were flawed and illegal. And the government that it has produced has failed to deliver. Because it is an illegitimate government. It's not accountable to the people. So these repeated reports of the opposition performing is saying the exact opposite. And we have got to reject those reports because they are misleading people. They're making people believe that regardless of the election having been rigged, it's still delivering. It is not delivering. I'd like to remind people what Margaret Dongo said about our election opposition leaders and why they participated in the flawed elections.
Social worker. You know, politics is not a business. This is what I want to remind most of our MPs and other people.
Do you think they look at it as a business?
Yes, they look at it as a business. Because they look at it as a business seriously. Because the moment they go, business and employment creation. Because if they go to parliament, you are employed. You get a car, you get a stable salary, and you are paid until your term is over. Already you are employed. If you are out, you're out of employment.
If you serve 2 terms, you get a pension?
Your urologist is lying to you about your swollen prostate, and if you knew the truth, you'd probably never step foot in his office again.
You get a pension. Then already, this is why people kill in politics. They kill to be in parliament. This is why we have violence in this country, because there is no employment. The only employment which is there is in politics. There is no other outside employment. So for them, a very good example is, look at what happened to CCC, the Triple C party. Have a look. When they lost, when they said they were rigged, what I expected from them, I expected all parliamentarians to say, we are not going to go to participate in a rigged system. And we are not going to sit in a rigged parliament. Because the elections have been rigged. So all of us were not going to parliament. Imagine what could have happened. We could have gone into new elections. There's no way ZANU-PF was going to rule alone.
You think so?
Yes.
Do they care?
Caring or not caring, the public would have forced them because the majority of the people would want representation in parliament.
But they went anyway?
But they went. They realized that, you know, you heard them complain, I used my own money to be in parliament. But what about me who have voted for you? I used my own money. So the idea is to recover. Is it a...
What we have in the form of the opposition in Zimbabwe today is an opposition that is there for the benefits. And what is tragic here is that some of our media are falsely reporting to give the impression that the same ineffective, useless opposition is actually delivering the services that we want. The people of Zimbabwe have got to look and think for themselves. are you really convinced that the opposition is delivering a good service to the people of Zimbabwe? Because it is. If it is, then that's fine. We can expect next time ZANU-PF to do the same thing, even if they rig the elections. At the end of the day, we are saying we still get a good, competent government, so it doesn't matter. But what I'm telling you is, we are not getting a competent government. The opposition is not performing at all. ZANU-PF dominates everything to the point that the opposition who are there are only there because they desperately wanted to be on the gravy train. And they will stay there as long as they can get away with conning the ordinary people into believing they are being in parliament or in the council is making a difference. We should not be conned into believing that a flawed and illegal electoral process can produce a competent government. All these stories of achievements by the opposition coming from such medias as Change Radio are just bullshit. They are meant to perpetuate the present system of rigged elections and illegal government by making us believe that the rigged elections produced a government nonetheless that is delivering, or a local council that is delivering. They are not. And I think the people of Zimbabwe should start looking at some of these medias with a critical eye and realizing that these are part and parcel of ZANU-PF's own media, bombarding us, the people, on a daily basis with the various achievements projects, ribbons being cut, giving the impression that the country is making giant steps of development, when in reality, the country just sinking deeper and deeper into the abyss. We must open our eyes. These stories of great achievements are nothing but lies, both by the ZANU-PF media and the so-called independent media that is meant only to promote the opposition sellouts who keep participating in these flawed elections, knowing fully well that the process is flawed, and that participating will only give ZANU-PF legitimacy and perpetuate the nation's suffering. We need to be a lot smarter if we are ever going to end this nightmare of rigged elections and bad governance.